Well, I think we're going to get started here. I know a lot of folks are going to be trickling in throughout. But hi, thank you all for sharing your afternoon / early evening with us. My name is Allison Sardinas. I am the Center for Election Sciences Director of Public Affairs, and I have had the pleasure of working with Mary and Brandon here that you see on camera, who've been chatting with me a bit. There are lobbyists out of Maryland who have done the work of speaking with your legislator, our legislators, for the past few years now. And we've had the pleasure of really doing a lot of good business with them. And I think one of the things that I learned when working with them was there are a lot of misconceptions about how to speak with your legislator, what it means to lobby or attend a lobby day, as an activist or as someone who doesn't have, a bunch of money, what that looks like and how that advocacy can work. And we really figured that it would be a really nice thing to be able to share some of that knowledge with you all that we've been able to learn through our partnership and make that accessible for you all as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Brandon and Mary, and there's Cross, who's also part of their team over at Pinnacle Strategies. They're going to give you all a presentation. There's going to be lots of room for Q&A. If you have a question, I know for me, if I have a question and I don't ask it right away, sometimes I forget it. Make sure to drop that in the chat. We will get to all of those questions. And we will have time for more dynamic Q&A there at the end as well. And I just want to say again, thank you all for joining us. And I hope that you get something out of it.
Yeah, I hope they get something out of it too, Allison. Thank you, everybody. My name is Brandon Butler. I'm the owner of Pinnacle Strategies, a lobbying firm here in Maryland. We've been working with the Center for Election Science over the last 2 years and have been really pushing a number of efforts in Maryland regarding approval voting. And so when I started Pinnacle Strategies now 4 years ago, built on what is over 15, 17, 18 years in Annapolis, being not only a lobbyist, a registered lobbyist, but also, have been a county employee, county leader, but more importantly, was a staff person in the legislature. We'll talk about that and the importance of staff people. You'll hear that a lot during our presentation. But when I started Pinnacle Strategies, I said I would be successful if I achieved two things. First, working on meaningful, impactful things and issues for our clients, and two, doing it with our friends. And so I'm very, very honored to be joined today. Not only with Cross Ritchie, who had made a cameo. Here, do it again.
Hello, everybody.
Cross is the newest member of our team. He's been a part of Pinnacle now almost a full year. Prior to that, he served as a staff person with Senator Mike McKay in the Maryland State Senate. And now I am also very happy to be joined with Mary Kramer Wagner. Mary is a dear friend of mine, or at least she was. Well, we'll see how this call goes. Maybe we'll change. Maybe that will change tunes. But she has been a dear friend of mine for over 20-ish years or so, and 22. And so now I have a Taylor Swift song stuck in my head. Thanks, Mary. I'm not going to sing it and then completely lose the audience for our friends at Center for Election Science. But Mary has been also 21 years with the State Board of Elections, working her way up to the head of voter registration. And so we're going to go through a number of slides, talk a little bit with you. As we saw coming in, there's some folks from Georgia and from Florida, and Marcia, who's at work right now. So if you're at work, thanks for joining us. If you're eating a sandwich like Vern, keep eating. We hopefully will give you something to not only to think about, to chew on while you're chewing on. And so with that, I'm going to share my screen and hopefully, oh, no, hold on, I'm going away. Here, now here's the button to share screen so that we can, let's see here. I'm going to stop presenting because there's two buttons on that. I'm going to say go that way. All right, so hopefully you all can see my screen. We good? Are we? Oh, look at that. Okay, wrong button. We're going to share window. That might be what I'm trying to do. No, okay. Let me try this again. So we're a technology-based firm. Just kidding. As you can see, hold on. We'll get this right. A bit fuzzy. Yes, Vern. I am a bit fuzzy when it comes to technology. Try that. Can somebody come off mute? Can somebody say that they can now see my screen?
Beautiful.
All right. Thank you. Okay. It only took me 10 tries, but it's just like my Baltimore Orioles. You know, sometimes you have to work from the bottom to make your way to the top. Okay. So instead of calling it, how to talk to a legislator, I have great news for you. You can talk to your legislature and you don't need a Rosetta Stone subscription. But sometimes the language of advocacy is unique. And so what we're going to do today is really kind of talk to you about how to effectively advocate. And this is whether you are whether you're advocating for election reforms like the Center for Election Science, or what comes down to effectively advocating your position about a pothole. And so we're going to talk to you a little bit about some tools and some strategies to effectively advocate for your causes by engaging with legislators. Yes, I was going to entitle this presentation, "Yes, Legislators Are People Too," because they come with a set of biases just like everybody else. And so what we do is try to find ways to effectively drive the positions of our clients home, so that whenever it comes time to make important decisions, that we have that they have the best tools to push those legislative priorities, those policy priorities over the finish line. So they say, about sausage, and making sausage and making laws, and nobody likes to see it. Well, why does that matter? Because engaging with legislators is critical. It's absolutely critical to shaping policies and laws. And I will also submit to you that engaging with legislators is critical to shaping communities. And so I know that the Center for Election Science has done a lot of great work around those advocacy positions at the grassroots. And so when we came on, we were a little bit of the guinea pigs of how to make a state legislative position for approval voting. And so that is so what we are trying to do is to ensure the voices in the reform community, such as you all, have a way to get your voices heard in elected bodies. So this is something, again, I'm not singing, I'm not Taylor Swift. I don't look like her, but this is something that we're going to focus on. And if you ever had that wonderful Schoolhouse Rock talking about "I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill," well, here's some of the things that you might already know. A bill starts with that little idea. Could be a big idea, but it starts with an idea. Then it's finding a legislator's office to work with to draft a piece of legislation to be implemented. And whether, again, you're in Maryland or Florida or wherever you are, drafting, it really does require a bill sponsor. And then when that bill sponsor drops the bill into the hopper, is what we refer to in Maryland, it gets assigned to a committee where there is a public hearing on the matter. And then if you're so lucky, sometimes committee chairmen are also very, very powerful. They can take that bill and stick it in their drawer and never see the light of day. Or they will have it out on a voting list to be sent out to the floor. And then whenever it passes the one chamber, it crosses over into the other to go through the entire process all over again. And then ultimately ending up on the governor or president's desk. Mary, you've spent a lot of time in and around Annapolis, and this is a pretty slide, but my goodness, it's a lot of work.
Excuse me, it is a lot of work, and it's also knowing various personalities and whatnot, and who gets along with whom. And again, just really, as Brandon said, developing those relationships and having champions behind you. If your legislator, you're the committee chair, and the vice, they have vice committee chairs and they have subcommittees. So it's like an onion, you peel an onion, right? And we were able to get to, some of the subcommittee chairs on elections to say, all right, this is really good, and educate. It's really all about education, and education. Because just like us, the legislators don't know what they don't know.
Right. And that's a very good point. And so this is pretty much the same process that you'll have in your state, working through a committee system onto the floor of a respective House or Senate, and then ultimately getting to that chief executive officer, whether that's the governor or or if you're doing federal work, and ultimately getting to the president's desk. Just as that process is the same, this is the same as well in creating or in having that idea, coming back to these really four points around knowing your audience. So again, just like, I'm going to go back to it. Just like I'm not going to be singing a Taylor Swift song, even though, I've known Mary for 22 years. I think this is an opportunity to, know your audience, find your representative in your community. There are resources. The NCSL is a good. The National Center for State Legislatures is a very good resource to help you find your state or federal legislator. Again, there's in political science they like to talk about how individuals often don't like the institution that they're going to lobby in front of, but they like their legislator. Where individual members of Congress, for instance, have a much higher approval rating than Congress as an institution. I know I just shocked you. But here is a way that finding your representative also ensures that you have a voice with that legislator. Here's another one that I think is absolutely important, is understand staffers. Just like legislators are people, they have staffers who work with them and who are some of the best people you'll ever meet, and two, are some of the hardest working individuals in and around any legislature that you go to. And so these legislative aides, sometimes, who are just coming out of college, who are finding their way themselves, are gatekeepers to get to the congressman, get to the legislator, and so get to know them, get to know their priorities, their relationships. There are a lot of times where where I know walking into a legislative office, you'll have legislative staff that will tell you a lot of stuff about their personal life, and even just being interested in knowing what's going on with them, because they're being overworked. They're working long hours into the night. But they have families, they have relationships. So getting to know them will also allow you to be able to I don't want to say have preferential treatment, but will have better access to their legislature. Mary?
I was just going to say, so before a lot of you were even born, that's how I started in the Maryland legislature. I was chief of staff for the Washington County delegation in Maryland, and that's how I just moved through the process. So you've got 3 individuals that have been staffers, have been sitting at that front desk, and have been treated like royalty, and have been treated like, you do this and you do this for me now. And guess where that request kind of, and I hate to say it, but you get more with honey than you do with vinegar.
Yeah, and that's very important, because in the course of in Maryland, the course of a 90-day session, some of your sessions run shorter, some of them run longer, some of them are year-round. Pennsylvania, California are year-round legislatures, and so in any of those instances, what you have are legislators who are inundated with requests day in and day out, and they often pass it down to their legislative aides and their chiefs of staff, so that is a way, in order to get to your legislator, getting to your legislative aide is imperative. The other is focusing on committees. Committees of jurisdiction are very important, not only for whenever you have a legislative ask, but also understanding that there are dynamics in a committee. There are voting blocks. There are people who like each other, people who don't like each other, people who like to get on each other's nerves, and they're all in committees, and they go into committees and spend a large chunk of their time in committee settings. And so knowing which ones to, whether it comes time to pick a bill sponsor, whether it comes time to picking a committee champion, whether it comes time to dropping a question during a hearing and having a legislator ask that question of your opposition. It's all things that you need that are strategies and games, or gaming the system a little bit of how to play. Finally, do your homework. One of the worst feelings is whenever you get a question and you have no idea what the answer is. Well, one of the worst things that you can do is try to BS your way through it. And we're going to talk a little bit later about being a trusted advisor, trusted by legislators. And so that is one of the biggest no-nos to do. Is confrontation is the biggest, I think, is the biggest no-no. But probably very close second is BSing your way whenever you don't know the answers. So research, and doing your homework, I think, is very important. Crafting a message. And so what as everybody I'm sure knows, having talking points, having data, having a clear request, is something that's not only good when you're talking to a legislator, but hey, it's good at life. And so ensuring that you'll have impact sometimes it's in a 2-minute span, sometimes it's longer, knowing your stuff, but not only knowing your stuff, but being able to communicate that. And so I think that is where, admittedly, in reformed communities, sometimes we love data. The Center for Election Science loves data and does very well with data. I think it's presenting that impact data in a certain way that legislators can easily digest, and then not only digest, but whenever they hear it enough, spit it back in a way that wins, or that your argument is winning whenever you start hearing your message coming back in a legislator's mouth. But that also leads to making sure that your request is clear, making sure that you're not asking for, hey, I want this state to pass a law that utilizes approval voting. Okay, great. If that is your message, then don't also piggyback on, and you should get rid of primaries, and you should get rid of this, and you should have unified campaign finance reform. If you're doing that, you're muddying the water, and people don't oftentimes have, or a legislator who's being pulled in 20 different directions sometimes doesn't always have the bandwidth to understand all of those requests all at the same time. Mary, you've dealt with this a lot with elections policy in Maryland.
Absolutely. And Brandon is spot on. It's got to be one message. It's great if you've got different agendas, but if you're hitting up one particular legislator, you could have multiple legislators and say, oh, okay, I'm going to go to, legislator Cross Ritchie for this, and maybe then I'll go to legislator Brandon Butler for that. And I'm not touching Mary Wagner because she doesn't know anything. So, but you can divide that, but don't bog down one particular legislator, even though they seem election related. They cannot be in the same bill because they are multiple topics.
Yeah, and I'm gonna bring Cross in on this one too, because he's been most closely on the staffer side. And Cross, why don't you kind of tell them, we developed this last legislative session a message calendar for elected officials. And so we often did it in the form of one-pagers,
right,
where where Cross and Mary particularly got the chance to walk around and drive home the message and also have that leave behind.
Right. So this past session, myself, Mary, Brandon, we got together and we had one-pagers, and it was hitting the point consistently over and over and over again. This is what we're doing. This is what we're trying to do. And it was comprehensive and easy to digest for legislators and even staffers.
But even those messages, there was a common thread between them all, that approval voting is easy to implement. Correct. That it can be done already in the existing systems in Maryland, that it can that it's already something that voters can digest. And simultaneously, we're drawing a separating approval voting and ranked choice voting. This is something that we have actually kind of fallen in love with. We're calling it the 4-part meeting format, and this is something that you can take in talking to your legislature and really impact by using these really simple 4 steps. 1, thanks. Thank them for their time. Thank them for hearing. Thank them for considering right off the bat. Starting with a little bit of kissing up doesn't hurt. Mm-hmm. And so this drives home the message right off the bat of, okay, they're here. Okay, why are you at my door? Delegate, I just want to say thank you so much for fitting us in. We know you're busy, and we're going to really keep this real simple. Approval voting in Maryland is not only an important thing, but it is critical for engaging the electorate. This is, Delegate, as you've heard over and over again, I'm sure you've heard people have said, why vote? Why have that? Why go out on election day? I got to go to work. I got to get kids. Why am I going out and voting? Because after all, my vote doesn't matter. Well, here is a way that we can utilize a reform, and that we can truly show show individuals that their vote not only does matter, but but by employing approval voting in Maryland, we can show that that communities are heard and are more representative through their legislatures, or through their elected officials. And so that's why we are now asking you to support Senate Bill 452, where we have Senator Mike McKay, who is going to he's putting this bill in. We're looking for co-sponsors. We think that you'd be a great one for this. It's coming to your committee anyway, so you're going to see it. Why not be a part of this now, rather than getting your name as a co-sponsor after the bill passes? And so that is not only the thanks, the story, the ask, and then comes the follow-up. And so what we're looking at, and here we are, all smiles, and Mary's smiling too. And so your personal story of how these issues impact, and these are a couple of the one-pagers Cross talked about. Brief, compelling narrative. These are showing, not only in this case, it's showing how approval voting works, but also how this is very similar, how there's a case study that we passed out that we worked on with the Center for Election Science in St. Louis, before and after. So back to that, having communities be more representative of by individuals who look like them, who sound like them, who are approved by them. And so that is, again, highlight how this legislation would directly affect their district and the people that they represent. Mary, I think that is also a really important point, is driving home for a lot of these legislators.
Absolutely. No question. And back to your point and Cross's point, those one-pagers were very beneficial, and not, spreading them out and not dumping them all at once. But it also gave us an opportunity, again, getting back to the staffer thing, crossing that threshold and saying hello to the staffer, and, did you have a good weekend? How are you doing? That type of thing. And then them taking the time to talk to us, and the more information we were able to give to the staffers, then, well, let's face it, it was Cross talking to, they talking to Cross. Sorry, Cross.
But Mary, I think that you have a story. We'll cut the legislator's name out, but you have a story about how this actually also works for whenever we need to get to the legislator. And it was that extra touch point that pushed you in front of the line, even with some of our other lobbyist colleagues.
Oh, you mean when I just cut in line because I didn't realize there was a protocol? And that was my first year as a lobbyist. And because I had a great connection with staff, I didn't realize there was a line. I just walked right in the office and was like, hi. And all these high-powered lobbyists were looking at me like, how the heck did she do that? And then I got something in the office, and I went back, and I'm like, oh, are you all still waiting? Oh, I'm sorry. It was a true blonde moment. Yeah.
But it also comes back to the relationship, right? Of having put in the work, having known not only your legislator but their staff as well. And so there's oftentimes you get the answer, you hear their perspective. Sometimes they go, well, I've never thought about it that way. Sometimes there's pushback. And to handle that, I'm going to start with the one in the orange. First of all, avoid confrontation. Again, legislators are getting confronted with a lot of things. Sometimes it's their fault. A lot of times it's not.
Mm.
And they're getting hammered by constituents on a regular basis, all the way from the trash wasn't picked up on my curb today to I don't understand why you are supporting XYZ. And so avoiding confrontation, maintaining that collaborative approach, working on solutions together, I think is very, very important. Also, offering to find answers. I said, earlier that the second big no-no is also, not BSing your way through it. If you don't have a response, offer to research. I think sometimes having not showing that you have all the answers is often a good thing. Where, what, delegate, that's a fantastic point. Let me research that and I'll get right back to you. Of course, you also have to actually get back to them. And so having that immediate response, offering to research the issue, looking into it further. I have a wonderful senator who likes to call me on Saturdays, usually at night. And one of the things that I often would do with him is say, hey, you know what, that's great. Let me look into that. Let me get back to you. He is one of the smartest guys. I truly saying this. He's probably one of the smartest guys that I've really been a part of or have had a relationship with and known over the years. But offering to be that trusted source of information, I think, is also something that's refreshing to legislators. But also, they're more likely to come back to you time and again of, okay, what about this issue? What about that issue? Mm-hmm. In approval voting, I think this is also vitally important, because what we have done is where there have been conversations about things such as, okay, so representative, does that mean that approval voting leads more towards electing minority candidates, or whether that is, and so oftentimes we would leave legislators' offices, and I'd call Allison or email Allison afterwards and go, hey, we just ran into this person. Can you get us information on this? And then circling back with that legislator and going, delegate, senator, we got this information. We wanted to put this in your hand. And oh, by the way, here's an issue paper that the Center for Election Science just put out. We think that this is vitally important. I know you're really busy with stuff. I've already highlighted the section that I think that you'd be. So if you don't look at anything else, this is. And so what we then have done is continue to build that rapport, and so much so that whenever we were walking down the halls towards the later end of the session, there were many times where a delegate or senator would go, hey, so what's going on with approval voting now? And so that's something that I think we're very proud of, holding the standard for the Center for Election Science. So and then also acknowledge concerns. Not, I'm sorry, there are, as much as there are very brilliant people who are elected to office, there are some people who aren't. And so knowing and acknowledging the legislator's concern and perspective, even though you want to say, hey, you moron, you say it quietly, you bring it in, and you say, you know what, delegate, that's a really great concern. I think I think that it might not be exactly the way that you may have phrased it there, but let's look into that. Let's talk about that. Let's understand your hesitation. And then also refocus back to district impact. Elections are easy to advocate for, because everybody knows when I'm with the analogy of closing the curtain behind you, or touching the screen, or taking the pen in your hand and bubbling in the bubble. Refocusing on, okay, this is what it's going to impact to your constituents in your communities. So, having gone through COVID and through the pandemic, there's been a lot of ways that you can engage your legislature at a virtual level. And Mary, why don't you cover this one?
I mean, certainly, email can be effective. However, just like everybody else, how many emails do we get? And I could probably count on two hands the legislators that I personally know that go through their emails. So you have staffers that do that, and it's just like you're doing the best you can, and it's going to get missed. Phone calls are great. Again, if you do that, not confrontational, you're going to be brief. You're going to state the issue. I know when I was a staffer, and even when I was in elections, I would literally get voicemail messages that would cut off because you just couldn't handle it, right? And video calls are becoming more acceptable, and legislators and their staff are open to that now. And but nothing beats crossing that threshold, having that interaction with staff, and more importantly, sitting across from the legislator and their staff, because 9 out of 10 times they will bring in their chief of staff or their aide, which you want that aide in on it, because you're not always going to be able to deal with the legislator, but there are other alternatives. But yeah, cross over that threshold is the first.
And speaking of cross, you were that kind of that legislative assistant. Talk to them about that perspective.
Yeah. Sometimes, and I think we've talked about this over and over again within the last 20 minutes, but a staffer is just as important as the legislator is. And a lot of times, getting the staff on the same page with the policy that you want really is really hard hitting. That's effective, very effective, because that staffer is in the legislator's ear all day long, every day, really talking them through various legislation, various policy changes. And so, being that gatekeeper that we talked about, I had a lot of influence in a lot of ways with my boss, my former boss, the state senator. And so staffers are just as important,
because when everybody goes away,
right,
that legislator comes out of his or her office and goes, "Hey guys, what do you think about this?"
Absolutely.
So that is very important. I'll tell you a quick story about phone calls. One of the worst moments as a staffer for me was my legislator was trying to pass a bill on behalf of the local government. So at the request of the local government, for Sunday alcohol sales. Mm-hmm. The county that he was representing was a dry county on Sundays. And to say the confrontation and the vitriol that came because of that, I will never forget the phone calls and emails that started off with the blood of people who will be dying in cars because of Sunday sales is on your hands.
Right.
And they would often, sometimes even to me, say, "And you too." And so that is something, again, something that I remember, but I also remember not for a good reason. So please do not be confrontational, even though you're passionate about a subject. All right. So coalition power is the coalitions are powerful, not only on showing that showing the legislature. We say here, it's a key shortcut to building trust. To tell that legislator, "Hey, don't take our word for it. This group that you also trust is also in favor of it," or "We're talking to this group." That shows very quickly that your organization aligns with their mission as well as the mission of the legislator. And so after the meeting, follow-up is important. We talk about sending a recap within 24 hours. 24 hours is too long. Doing it, there's a lot of times where we would meet with legislators and then that afternoon would have a follow-up. Track commitments, schedule those follow-up meetings, again, and providing any requested information. Then also rapid response moments. The hearings come fast and furious. There's a rule in Annapolis that you have to sign up within 2 days of a legislative hearing, and you have a whopping 2 minutes to get your point across. So having those letters of support or opposition, filing those and knowing the legislative schedule, floor amendments or even more. In the past last year, we were able to successfully get a piece of legislation amended at the last minute and ultimately passed on the last day of the legislative session, because we understood that the process of having amendments in committee is sometimes just as important as those bill hearings. And then finally, so in conclusion, the big wrap up, this presentation was to provide a comprehensive overview. Hopefully I didn't put you to sleep. Hopefully you didn't choke on your food. And so by understanding the legislative process, whether again you're in Maryland or whether you're at any state or at the federal level, crafting a focused message, crafting a focused ask, telling a compelling story, but building coalitions, because at the end of the day, you should not be in it, or you're not in it alone. You'll find out if you take a look, if you do your homework. There are folks out there ready to hook arms with you and to push your message home. And so building that it will become a powerful advocacy tool for you. Again, whether you're advocating for election science or for approval voting, or whether you're just advocating for yourself, these are powerful tools, hopefully, to empower you to make a meaningful difference. And so here's the next steps. Get to know who represents you, state, local, federal level, knowing your representative, because at the end of the day, they represent you. And so they need to know what you're thinking. And stay tuned for some updates. We've been working actually with the Center for Election Science in this upcoming legislative session for Maryland, as well as trying to put together some tools for you all to impact your busy legislative session, which in Maryland starts at the beginning of the year, but quite frankly starts now in driving those messages home. And so we've got some time. Hopefully you've got some questions, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Anybody have
If
any
you all have
questions?
any questions, you can leave them either in the chat, or you can just sort of raise your hand. I know that we have a question here. It says, how do you handle competition with other lobbyists who have other priorities? And do you recommend maintaining relationships with those lobbyists? Thinking mostly of ranked choice voting. It's very strategic here.
Yeah, so absolutely. Your opposition on one issue might be your closest ally on another. And so having having some, folks that we work with, a number of other lobbyists on other issues such as cannabis and other reforms, that latching on to other folks will give you another set of eyes and ears, so that whenever you're standing in the hall, you're talking, hey, did you hear about so and so, or hey, did you hear about this issue, or this happened? Those are all strategic relationships that you build. Of course, there are other lobbyists. Mary knows them, Cross knows them, that are absolute idiots, and you just don't pay attention to them. And so you go, you avoid them, and they avoid you, and hey, guess what?
You do the head nod. You do the
Yeah, exactly. You do the head nod and you move on.
Right.
yeah. But Brandon, and to note that relationship with the lobbyists, because we've been able to talk when Brandon was talking about those amendments. Okay, hey, we're not totally on the same page, but what do you think if there's like a collaboration and we give the authority for your method and our method, and if you get buy-in, you're starting to build that coalition.
And that's exactly it. It's about it. Those lobbyists will also represent other entities that you can assist in building those coalitions.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. Like I'm not a lobbyist. I'm just I just work for an org. And I think it's important for people who see all this, like, oh my God, that's a full-time job. Like, how do I even get started? I think it's just really important to note that no matter if your legislator if you don't like them for whatever reason, which is common, or they're on the other side of an issue entirely, I think one of the things that I've learned is the first step is really to introduce yourself, kind of regardless of how you feel. Introduce yourself, especially if you have something like approval voting, which is so bipartisan. Just for everyone's edification, we do have sponsors on both sides of the aisle. We have support on both sides of the aisle in Maryland. Our sponsor, Senator Mike McKay, who is a Republican, right? So this really isn't a polarizing issue. So I want you all to feel empowered to bring this to whoever it is, even if they're a total goofball. You can chat with them, introduce yourself, introduce the topic, educate them, and then you might be surprised at the ways the coalition sort of builds itself. If you maintain that level of contact, you'll notice that a lot of people don't do that. So if you're the person who's willing to continually come back and present your information, be curious, be open, you might be surprised at what you can accomplish, because most people don't have that tenacity. They don't keep up with it. And so even if you're not a full-time lobbyist, even if you're just a regular person, it is absolutely accessible to you if you are dependable and willing to be that person who makes consistent contact.
Absolutely.
And Allison, also, don't quit. Don't, excuse me. It's, just because it doesn't happen the first session, you're educating. And that is such an important tool.
Yeah. And that's I'm glad you brought that up, because it particularly in Maryland, we have had we have an unspoken rule of three that we like to say, is that major initiatives generally don't happen, don't start to take root until really 3 years in. And so if you look at gaming in Maryland, if you look at cannabis reform in Maryland, those are all things that quite frankly, it took 3 years. And then it ultimately took, in some instances, a constitutional amendment. And so, as Nina pointed out, we are entering a third year into this relationship of introducing Maryland to approval voting. We've been also back to that coalition building. Nina's been very instrumental, also pulling in other coalition groups, such as the NAACP, the ACLU, and those conversations have been very important, particularly to legislators who often ask the question, okay, where is this group coming in on? And so saying, look, hey, great, this group just passed a resolution about approval voting, and here's the language. Opens up a lot of doors, again, so that it becomes that shortcut into, hey, these folks understand the issue, why don't you? And so I think that's also a great point. So thank you, Mary. Thank you, Allison. And Nina from the background. Thank you.
Any other questions? We have a few more moments here. I know, Vern, you asked how did it not sound? What did you say? A canned ham, I believe. You are muted, but I believe that was an affirmative. Yeah. How not sound like a canned ham when you are talking to your legislators, and not to be, not entirely, do you mean like boring?
Okay. Yeah, canned ham. That's I've never heard of that one.
Yeah.
I've never heard that either, but I like it.
I do like it.
I
And
think it's-
Vern, we will be using that from here on out. So
The impact. The
But
impact
it's-
is both ways. Canned spam.
Oh,
Yeah.
canned
Okay.
spam.
So
Okay.
I'll tell you, Vern, there have been, at the end of the day, legislators like to hear stories from the heart.
Mhm.
And a case in point, we assisted on an election or a education reform this year, and it will, yes, definitely not sounding like that. So what I'll say is, we were a part of a education reform this year. If you've followed Maryland, it's called the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. And so what we have worked on is opening the world of work for kids through career counseling. And so there were actually multiple bills this session that sought to eliminate that program. Believe it or not, some idiot put that forward. And so what we did was, people didn't hear from us; they heard from kids, and they heard from the career counselors themselves. And so what happened then is, the message was incredibly passionate, incredibly personal. So when it comes time to talk to legislators, I often say, if we're dealing with groups, here's the parameters. If you want to send an email to your legislator, here's some talking points. Make it your own. Take it, put it in Vern language. And that is the most important, because staffers who get that email, or who might get that letter, or there are times where, hey, it is so easy for a grassroots organization to say, to send out to their listserv, send this email to your legislator, and you go on and you copy, you paste, you send it on its way. Guess what the legislative staff does oftentimes? If that person's not from the district, delete.
Yep.
Because, hey, it's easy, right? Because just as much effort as you put into that email, they're going to put it into reading it.
Exactly.
But if you take the time and you say, this is why approval voting is important to me, people stop and read. Yeah, I'll never forget my first session in Annapolis. I had interned for the House Minority Leader, and the first issue that I had was an individual about no problem. There was a issue about the governor slashing money out of the budget, and so you see a line item on a budget, you kind of overlook it. But this one had to do with their kid getting an in-home nurse that would come by, and that money would actually get slashed out. And that woman, she lived in a town called Accident, and she told a passionate story about how losing that money was going to impact her. I still know exactly the address from where she lives to this day, because that letter impacted me as a little intern that much. So there are people who actually read, who actually care, and who actually want to see, but it's that same level of care that you're giving to your story.
And I think that was a pretty good way to end it. Brandon, actually, yeah, very nice. And if you all have any questions, feel free to email me. I'm going to put my email in the chat. I wanted to hand it off to one of our team members, Brian, to close it out, and then we will let you free. It is 5 p.m. here, and I know it's getting late for you all too.
Yeah, thank you so much, Allison, and thank you so much to Pinnacle. Just a quick note here. As we look ahead to the fall and the rest of the year, one thing is clear, momentum really is building, and CES is right at the center of it. But continuing this work, it really does take all of us, and this is a grassroots powered movement. And that means the most impactful thing you can do truly is to contribute to this work, whether that be through lobbying or through, in my jurisdiction, through financial support as well. So if you're able to, contribute, start a monthly donation or even a one-time gift, that really does allow us to plan ahead and lets us say yes to opportunities that can change the future of elections. So if you've already given this year, thank you so much. And if you have been meaning to or new to CES, probably not as many people are. I think many here are very familiar with us. Now's a really great time to get involved, and your support will help us to expand all of our efforts in Maryland and elsewhere. So every dollar helps and every supporter matters. So thank you so much for being a part of this.